All right.
Omar, you tweeted this out, right? I'm going to tweet it out.
Yes, I did.
I'm going to tweet out your tweet. Okay.
Yes, I did, Hyde. Launching X's and Omar now. Come watch here. I'll do it again.
Here we go. No, I just did it. We're all good.
Okay.
I mean, do it again. Why not? The more the merrier. I'm ready, Omar. Are you ready?
Give me 20 seconds. But
yeah,
yes.
actually, as I'm looking at this.
And I need my gulp. There'll be a lot of talking. Actually, more listening than talking. All right.
We're listening. What do you mean?
I just want to hear what you got to say, Dave.
Oh, you had a good column today. I want to hear what you had to say.
No, but I want to hear what you have to say.
We got a lot of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of subject matter. A whole lot of subject matter.
Yeah, a whole lot. All right, you ready? All right. Welcome to another week of X's and Omar Dolphin fans and all those out there in the NFL who are just curious and nosy about what's happening in the latest in the Dolphins universe. Here we were thinking that we were going to be addressing our fourth week of a Miami Dolphins coaching search to replace Brian Flores. And little did we know that the Miami Dolphins fired coach would be filing a class action lawsuit against the NFL, representing black coaches and black executives all throughout the league's history who have faced racial discrimination in the league's hiring practices. Flores, who has led the Dolphins to back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 2002 and 2003, was fired because of poor collaboration, which was cited in his lawsuit for his inability to work cooperatively with the organization. The Dolphins basically claimed he didn't play well with others. And while there is some truth to those claims, Flores' lawsuit alleges some bombshell allegations about the franchise's attempt to, let's say, tank the 2019 season, Dave, and a $100,000 per loss bounty that Steve Ross allegedly claimed he was going to pay Flores for losses when those wins started to stack up. Flores, then we get to the infamous, or as we say, controversial yacht gate, where a quarterback that Flores had an existing relationship with and was supposed to be trying to lure to Miami in 2020 offseason, there was a meetup planned, but Flores showed up, and at the understanding that this tampering process was about to take place, he left the yacht, Dave. He left the meetup with a Hall of Fame quarterback we all should know is Tom Brady. Flores' lawsuit also goes through the discriminatory practices in the NFL that he experienced in interviews with the Broncos in 2019, interviews with the Giants this year, claiming that they had hired Brian Daboll 3 days before Flores was supposed to have his second interview with the Giants. And ultimately, the lawsuit is basically acknowledging that the Rooney Rule is a failure and needs to be changed. So do the hiring practice. He's suing the NFL and the team's alleged racism and discrimination in a potential class action lawsuit that could have a lasting impact on the NFL. Let's first address the claims about the Rooney Rule, Dave, and its ineffectiveness and the league's discriminatory practices. Fair, unfair?
Well, let's look at the league right now. There's one black coach in Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin. That's it. Okay. So when the league is 70% black and you have one, I mean, and we've talked about this for years, and that the Rooney Rule it's the right idea, but it ultimately gets back to what are the owners, what are the general managers going to do and how are they going to hire people. And the idea is it's a sham interview, is what Brian Flores is saying, that he had no chance to get the Giants job. He had no chance.
I don't know if that's fair.
That's what he's saying. He's saying that Brian Daboll already was hired when he went in for the interview.
I don't know if that was fair because if you're the Giants, and let me just play devil's advocate here. If you're the Giants, and let's be real about it, it became down to the Giants and the Dolphins. Let's not pretend like we don't know this. And if the Dolphins made Brian Daboll a substantially large contract offer, he could instantly change his attention to the Miami Dolphins and leave the Giants in Brian Flores' hand, which is how I feel as if the Giants are going to counteract these. Clearly Daboll was a front runner, was always the front runner. But
here's my question on the Dolphins and Brian Daboll. They announced on a week ago, maybe Thursday, we're going to bring people in for a second interview next week. Next week. In other words, if they were serious about Brian Daboll, why wait? We're bringing him in today because we don't want anybody else to hire him. You knew the Giants were out there for him. If you were that serious about Brian Daboll, you wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, we'll talk to you next week."
Because you knew you weren't the front runner. You weren't the job that he wanted. You weren't his number one.
So maybe everybody knew he's going to the Giants.
They did.
As Bill Belichick knew in his mistaken text to Brian Flores. It sounds to me like there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that everybody knew he was going to the Giants.
Of course. Come on. We knew he was going to the Giants. And what makes me uncomfortable about this process or about the Rooney Rule is that I don't believe that it's hitting the intended targets. The problem that I've always had with the Rooney Rule, and understand I've written college theses about this thing and these issues and black work. This is, as an African-American male who follows and covers the NFL, I've been applaud Brian Flores for this lawsuit because he's in the process. He's literally still a finalist for 2 jobs, and he's coming out and saying that, hey, this process is flawed. It's a sham. And most in the NFL already know that. And people are hired. People are hired before they even begin the interview process. Most everybody in the NFL already know this. But what I find troubling about the Rooney Rule is that it doesn't work hard enough to impact the level of the NFL that it can actually impact in terms of the glass ceiling about offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches. Where's the work? Where's the effort to knock down that glass ceiling? Well, we've knocked down the glass ceiling on defensive coordinators. Now we've got like 5 or 6 former defensive coordinators who turned into head coaches who didn't have success because for one reason or another, and now they're struggling to get the second opportunity. Or we've got veteran coaches out there like Jim Caldwell and Marvin Lewis who are struggling to get another opportunity, even though they're quality coaches that are out there. And you can hire whoever you want for your job in your organization. But until we have more candidates that look like me, that are desirable to these NFL coaches, nothing's going to change. And I really don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd say, Omar, I've been covering the NFL now for roughly 35 years. And for the first half of that, probably more, the question was black quarterbacks. Why aren't there more black quarterbacks? Why aren't there more? We have 1. Oh, there's 2 in the league. Oh, now we're back to 1. That issue is gone. I'm hoping in the next few years, it's the same idea happens with black coaches, that it doesn't become nobody talks about black quarterbacks anymore. They're just quarterbacks. Really? What? Really? Well, I'm not pretending I know the black experience.
No,
okay?
it's still an issue, and you have them go through the stereotypes about black quarterbacks. And I mean, it wasn't too long ago. You remember the Cam Newton draft fiasco, where Cam wasn't.
He went number 1,
but he wasn't intelligent enough to play the position. Look at Lamar Jackson. Come on. He was supposed to be a wide receiver. He couldn't play quarterback. They still go through these stigmas issues.
I guess here's my larger. I don't even know how many black quarterbacks there are in the league now. There are a substantial number, though. I think we'd agree. Certainly more than 20 years ago. Okay, I'm just hoping that the conversation that Brian Flores has, he's torched the league. I mean, he has put a blowtorch to the league hierarchy and turned it on, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I'm hoping at the end of this, in a few years, X number of years, that it's not a subject anymore for black coaches either.
I have a hard time believing that's going to be the case because we racism doesn't go away. I know this personally. Whenever I write about race, I'm inundated with hate mail and comments, and you see the other side of the world, the world that hides under a rock until they feel like their advantages or benefits to the world are being taken away from them, or the league is becoming too black. The fear of the black league, fear of the black NFL. That you hear from executives, I have heard from executives that the fear is that the NFL is going to become like the NBA. And that's really an insensitive thing to say, where, we can't afford for it to be a players-run league. And, we have to maintain our control and power and influence however we can. I laugh all the time when people say that organizations are run properly. Well, organizations generally are run by white men who have no football background whatsoever, like the Miami Dolphins at one point, and are basically in positions of power because they knew the right people, worked under the right people, anointed by the right people. And
Omar, here's the interesting or ironic thing about the Dolphins being in the middle of this. They are the most progressive team in sports hiring.
Yeah. I mean, one of them, yes.
Their coach, their GM, for a while, their head of pro personnel, their assistant GM, their defensive coordinator. I remember 5 of the top 6 or 7 positions in the organization. And we're not even getting to executives like Jason Jenkins, or you can go down the list.
Yeah.
I
remember an era of the Miami Dolphins where they were mocked for having a top-level female executive. Do you remember that era of Donna Ponte? I mean, they were the laughing stock of the NFL. And now in this politically correct, Me Too, social justice era, we must do everything right. We're pushing women into the forefront now. When Donna Ponte was there, she earned her position, and she was mocked. Routinely, consistently mocked, to the point she had to leave the organization and move up to the NFL.
That's not why she left the organization. Yeah, she didn't do a very good job in the order. The whole bullying game, she was assigned with Joe Philbin. I mean, she left for all the
things. How is Donna Ponte going to prevent bullying?
Well, she's on top of the flow chart, okay? She's in charge. She and she left for all the reasons everybody else in those positions of power have left in the Steve Ross era. They haven't won. There's been a poorly run franchise. I mean,
yeah. Now, here's the interesting part of this conversation now, Dave. Let's discuss the tank bounty of $100,000 that Brian Flores is claiming that Steve Ross allegedly offered him to lose games, and the potential tampering of luring said quarterback Tom Brady. Let me begin with this. If you don't think tampering is part of the NFL, then you might as well tell me you believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, because you live in fantasy land. Tampering, what do you think happens at the combine? The NFL combine in Indianapolis every year is not about the draft prospects that are there. It's about free agency that's upcoming that will impact the draft prospects and bidding and offers. And, while the NFL doesn't want to know, no, it's not about that. They know the reality of it. This is what makes your league go. Now, do the prospects like Tom Brady sit in on the negotiations or, listen to the sales pitches of teams? Generally, no. But when you're a player of Tom Brady's stature, do you think he didn't have 5 or 6 conversations during the Super Bowl that was down here that year with teams and organizations? Listen to their best sales pitch. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers isn't right now literally listening to teams' best sales pitches about why he should join this organization or that organization, or go to Denver where Nathaniel Hackett is, or come to Tampa Bay, or come to Tennessee, or Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin? Those conversations are going on right now. So what I found kind of alarming, and I know Brian Flores has had these conversations, tampering conversations with agents. What I found a little alarming and disturbing is that he's claiming he's walking out of this yacht meetup because, oh my God, the morality of it is just past beyond me. I can't partake in any of this. Like, huh? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, Omar, to me, I read that and I agree. Look, tampering, everybody knows it happens. Okay, so let's take that subject and put the lawsuit over here.
Yes.
Let's talk about how the Dolphins are run. Okay, and because that's the subject of these episodes to me, the bribing to throw games, the tampering. What you have is a coach who doesn't respect his owner. Okay. That's what it comes down to. He said,
or a coach who isn't in lockstep with his owner.
And he's not the first one. Okay, look at the whole organization for the past 13 years. The owner has not earned or gained the respect of the people, the football people. Okay, and this is just the latest of that. Okay, and Brian Flores had his rough edges. I'm not from the start when he fired a coach 4 practices in, when he traded Minkah Fitzpatrick. I said this is not good. He's got to learn to play. But
Kenny Stills and Jay-Z Gate, and
here's the case where Brian Flores has already told the owner, I don't want to talk about this guy, and now he's being invited on a yacht, and there the guy is, Tom Brady. There he is, and he said, I'm not going to play this with. He did not respect the owner. Forget everything else. To me, and this is at the centerpiece of everything that's going on here. And do we want to get into questions now? Do we want to get into the $100,000?
Let's discuss the
$100,000. That's the smoking gun of what's going to happen now. Okay, and when you talk about these things, you got to stick to what we know right now. Okay, we know Brian Flores alleges that I got to plug in my phone here. Alleges that $100,000, to lose games, he's paid $100,000. The Dolphins couldn't even lose games, couldn't even tank right. This is what it tells you.
And we also know that they were supposed to be tanking, Dave.
Why didn't he just say, I'm the owner, play Josh Rosen? I mean, we got to see the young players. I want to see them. Okay, that's all he had to say. No coach in the NFL is going to go out and try to lose games. I don't care who it is. You're not going to say, we're going to try to lose a game. Never.
I think the Cincinnati Bengals tried to lose games.
Who?
Cincinnati Bengals, when they got Joe Burrow.
You're telling me Zach Taylor that day tried to lose the game?
Yes.
No.
And I have been told have been told that by somebody on that staff. Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yes.
Now, whether the organization wanted to lose games, I would agree with you, Omar. But no coach.
In hindsight, they were extremely thankful that they lost that overtime game.
Well, of course they are now. I mean, but the larger point, Steve Ross doesn't know the NFL. He doesn't know how to talk to people in the NFL. He doesn't. And worse, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And it keeps coming out time after time.
No, I disagree with you. I disagree with you from this standpoint. Let's throw the $100,000 losing bribery aside. And that's significant if true. Were they supposed to be tanking in 2019? Would that have been the wise thing to do? that season, it absolutely would have been.
My
Battery, yes.
we're having battery issues here. Okay.
But were they supposed to be tanking in that season? Yes, they were. Now, tanking for Tua or tanking for Joe Burrow, whatever it was, or if you wisely had selected Justin Herbert, I will acknowledge that in hindsight now.
Tank for tomorrow. Forget the name, okay? Just tank for tomorrow.
Yes, that was what that whole season was about. Yes. They claimed guys off the waiver wire or off teams' practice squads on a Tuesday and started them on Sunday and acted like it was just normal or the right thing to do. When this year I asked Flores about the possibility of actually starting a guy that they just claimed or playing a guy that they just claimed in a week, and he laughed it off like, oh, that would be ridiculous to do. And then he reminded himself like, oh, but I did do that in 2019. Like, let's not be naive.
Wait a second. It's posted in the locker room. It's posted in NFL locker rooms. Anybody comes to you offering money, offering whatever to throw games. How is it a violation? You are asked to report that to the league. So, I mean, I know the league and Brian Flores aren't on talking terms right now, but, you know, the owner comes to you and offers $100,000 to throw a game. I mean, we're just, if they can corroborate that, and the lawyers said we have corroborating evidence. And, you know, what does that mean? Because it was in a conversation Brian Flores said today on the one of the interviews, CNN, ESPN, CBS. And so what does corroborating evidence mean? That's one thing we're going to have to wait and see. But if it is corroborated, you're going to have the U.S. Attorney's Office, you're going to have the FBI, you're going to have racketeering charges, you're going to have bribery, you're going to have a scandal like you've never seen in the NFL before. A coach or an owner, a team owner giving $100,000, offering $100,000 to fix games. Can you imagine if a player fixed a game and now you have an owner trying to get a coach to do it? I mean, to me, Steve Ross just doesn't know how to talk, doesn't know how to be a proper NFL owner. There are better ways to do it. And I would imagine, here's the corroborating evidence. I'm curious, does that mean there were other people in the discussion? Did Ross say it to other people? It's hard to imagine he just secretly pulled Brian Flores aside and said, I do that. Now, maybe he did. We're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out.
I'm sure it was in a private meeting with him in his office. I'm
why are you sure of that? Why it could have been,
because that's generally how their conversations would probably go.
No, Ross is always surrounded by 4 or 5 people.
Okay, but when he's having that meeting with Flores at the end of the game, you think the 4 or 5 people are in there?
You're assuming Ross thinks he's doing anything wrong. He doesn't think. I don't think he thinks he did anything wrong by that. Because the whole as you said, the whole organization's tanking except the coach. And this gets, you know, we can talk about Brian Flores' communication. Where's the Dolphins' communication when they're hiring Brian Flores? Are you kidding me? You're bringing a Bill Belichick guy down here and you're saying lose games. Okay, you better get that out ahead of time. You better get time because
we're rebuilding. Anybody with common sense knows they weren't supposed to be winning games.
No, don't do that common sense thing. No.
Yes.
Then why did they sign Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Because they thought Ryan Fitzpatrick wasn't good enough to win games.
Play Josh Rosen.
Yeah, they did, and that would have definitely guaranteed you got the number 1 spot. But Brian Flores was trying to retain credibility, and I understood that. But you can retain credibility while not necessarily winning games.
Look, I was against the tank, but once you're in it, you better tank. You better get there. And here's the organization that's lost so many games in the last 2 decades. And yet when it came down to actually they need to lose games, they couldn't lose games.
and last week when the Cincinnati Bengals got to the Super Bowl, we mocked them for it, Dave. For a failed tank.
Yeah. And
Well, Steve Ross is trying to prevent that.
Well, here's the thing. Ross is in big trouble now, and the only question is how big a trouble. Is it just NFL type trouble, or is it legal trouble? Is it a big investigation over game fixing? And that's going to be the issue. And this is going to hang over the Dolphins. To me, it's time for Steve Ross to hand off to Bruce Beal, who is his league-approved successor, and get this, just move on, run the stadium, make a lot of money doing that, but let Bruce Beal. And I wrote a column about this. It's might be up on the site now. Bruce Beal should go out and hire a pristine football name, a Peyton Manning,
Who is that?
I just said Peyton Manning's ready to run a team. Give him a slice of ownership. Bring him down here. Because can you imagine what's going to happen as we move into the offseason here? We haven't even talked about the coach. 48 hours ago, 24 hours ago, what are they doing at coach? Is nonsense. They can't run an organization to a coaching search. And now they're in this other mess. This is going to carry all throughout the offseason and into next season.
Yeah, let's get to our first question of X's and Omar. Olive Grove asks, when you see what the Fins are likely to have to get past in the championship game and the Super Bowl in the next years, are you confident Ross will make the right choices?
Okay, we'll pause to laugh here, right? Seriously, come on now.
Yeah.
Listen. Let's say they were a well-run organization. Okay, let's put that qualifier into. Let's say they are a well-run organization. They're still behind. Look who they have to get through: Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow,
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson.
There's 5 top quarterbacks right now in the AFC. So even if they are a well-run organization, it's going to be a struggle to get by all those teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. But you telling me that this Dolphins team can't beat Cincinnati or can't beat Baltimore? They just beat Baltimore. They just, they beat Cincinnati the last 2 years. I know it's a different Cincinnati.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I am serious, Dave. I mean,
okay, let's break.
Brian Flores led Dolphins.
They went 2-5 against playoff teams. The 2 wins this year. Their 2 wins were against New England
Patriots.
Okay, yes. They went 0-4 against teams that made the second round, and they got outscored. I believe it's like 135-39 or something like that. Okay, all right. So, there's going to have to be massive improvement, which means good, smart football decisions.
Mm-hmm. Do I have confidence? No.
Okay, that's the question.
Yeah. Do I have confidence? No. But can it happen technically? It can.
Technically, yeah.
FZB, what in your opinion is the most important trait a head coach should have, Dave?
Leadership and ability to run a full team and hire a good staff. Those are 3 things. They all interlink to me. If you know how to run an organization, that means you're putting a staff together. You know how, so to me, when I'm looking for a football coach, it's the entire thing. I can hire a coordinator to run my offense. I can hire a coordinator to run my defense. But if you're talking that now, the NFL is getting away from that, and the Dolphins are getting away from it too.
Let's look at the former coaches. Sperano, he was a leader of men. That's the one thing I'll always respect about him. Philbin, can't necessarily say he was a leader of men, but he had great organizational skills. Gaze, people person, salesman, wasn't necessarily the greatest of coaches, but I will say this. He had a very good staff. He had a very good staff in his first staff. Kind of got watered down once Vance Joseph left, but his staff, I still respect it to this day. And then we have Brian Flores, who I think, if we could say any criticism about Brian Flores, is that his staff wasn't that good.
His offensive staff was a disaster. Yeah, 3 years. 3 years, 3 different coaches. Communication and collaboration. I mean, he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy.
Yeah. The one thing I will respect from his interviews with ESPN today, he said it. I live in truth, and I That's the one thing you could expect about him. I don't think he was very truthful about the Deshaun Watson situation, but he's a very truthful and honest and direct kind of guy.
Well, you can be truthful without being overly personal. I mean, sometimes it's how you deliver the truth, how you work with people. Okay. And, that you saw Josh McDaniel was hired by the Raiders, and the first thing he's talked about was he's learned how to work with people. Then his first job in Denver, where he was a disaster. And so we'll see if he is or he's just spouting words. But, I think I don't think Brian Flores will get a second job. But if he did get a second job, that would be something you'd have to look for.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he had to mature like Josh McDaniel. And I don't know if he'll ever get that opportunity, at least not in the NFL. Finaholic asks, after slow playing and methodically going through the coaching search, the Dolphins missed out on Brian Dable. Was this approach a mistake, Dave?
Well, I'm not going to say it was a mistake because they probably knew what Bill Belichick knew, that Brian Dable was going to the Giants. And congratulations. Oh, wait, I texted the wrong person. But so I'm going to guess that's the case. Now,
I've seen this theory online. I've seen this theory online that he didn't text the wrong person, but misread the text.
Okay, whatever.
And misread the text and thought they meant Brian Flores. We don't know what the truth is. Thought they meant Brian Flores when they really meant Brian Dable. Okay. So it's
Brian Belichick will be forthcoming on that.
Yeah. Oh, if deposed, he will. which is exactly why the NFL should fear this whole lawsuit and a class action lawsuit, because the deposition process, that could be real ugly, Dave.
But back to the question, the slow motion coaching search is something I just don't understand. I thought they were waiting on Jim Harbaugh. I was told national signing date on Wednesday, he's going to pop free, and nope. Then I was told Harbaugh talked to the Bears before the Vikings. Okay. And I also told Harbaugh was telling people exactly what Steve Ross was telling us, which was that Ross isn't going to hire a Michigan guy. He's just not going to do it. And Harbaugh felt that was good. So now he's in the Vikings, and so you got a no name as a coach, and maybe he's a genius, maybe, but there's going to be a huge learning curve for anybody coming in.
Let's get into our next segment, which is Jim Harbaugh. Oh, Dave.
Jim Harbaugh, coach, Miami Dolphins owner Steve Ross has been enamored with for over a decade, is seemingly headed back to the NFL. Harbaugh, the University of Michigan's coach, is visiting. He was reportedly hired by Minnesota now. It came out this morning. He's reportedly hired, which is about close to an F move as it gets in a season after a salary was reduced in half by the Michigan administration. He was very upset with Michigan. While Ross said a month ago, if Harbaugh's coming to the NFL, it's not going to be the Dolphins who hire him. Is this a wise stance, Omar? Did the Dolphins do themselves right?
I think once we hear what he's going to be making from the Minnesota Vikings, I think it will clarify to us why Steve Ross didn't go after him. He talked to the Raiders. He talked to the Bears. He talked to the Vikings. He did not talk to the Dolphins. I personally believe that he wanted to be in that conference, especially since Aaron Rodgers is leaving that conference. And I also think that if it wasn't going to be the Raiders, it was going to be the Vikings, because they've got the better quarterback. And say whatever you want about Kirk Cousins, he's statistically one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He's right below that tier of the elite quarterbacks in this league. And somebody like Harbaugh believes he could probably polish him up and present him to the world as an elite game-winning quarterback. So do I feel like Harbaugh, even if he had respect for Steve Ross, would have still taken the Minnesota job? Yes, I do.
Well, here's this side conversation to all this, and you mentioned the money, but evidently Harbaugh is asking for 10 years full control. Okay. Okay, so the question is, if you're Steve Ross, do you give that?
No, not
Why?
not 10 years.
Why?
Not 10 years.
Here's it's money. You're making hands over fist money. You got tennis. You got the Formula One racer. You got a sod company. Look, money. You're talking an investment right now at this point. Okay, who's the face of your franchise? It would have been Jim Harbaugh. Instead, it's who?
Tua?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my point. That's my point. From a business standpoint, it would have made sense to get Harbaugh. And from an organizational standpoint,
who would know more about Harbaugh intimately than Steve Ross? Outside of Trent Baalke and 49ers. I mean, in Jacksonville. It would be Steve Ross. And maybe he didn't want to deal with it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Now, maybe he didn't want to commit himself to a 10-year deal for $8+ million a year. And while I don't know what it's like to work with Harbaugh, but he's perceived as a kind of a weird duck. And
well, he is. He also took San Francisco to a Super Bowl and 2 championship games, and Ross tried to hire him once. So, I mean,
and made sure he got hired in Michigan.
It comes down to options. What's your option if you don't hire him?
Well, we'll discuss that right now, Dave. There seems to be 2 finalists for the Miami Dolphins job, and that's 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel and Cowboys offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. The Dolphins will meet with both finalists later this week. How would you stack up those choices, Dave?
I have no idea. Because for this reason, they aren't known commodities. They're offensive coordinators. One in Kellen Moore led a star-studded offense that couldn't get out of the first round. It's never gotten out of the first round of the playoffs when he's been coordinator. The other is perceived to has all these winning ideas, but it's not his offense. He's not calling the plays. And in fact, Kyle Shanahan, is known as an offensive guy. So I don't know what you're getting. And until you sit down in an interview with those guys and grill them and all that, but even then, there's going to be such a learning curve for either of them as a head coach that, come back in a year and we'll know who they are.
Yeah. It always impresses me talking to guys where they finish their rookie head coaches and they finish their first year and they all say the same thing. I was amazed at how many things came with the job that I didn't know came with the job. And that were my responsibility and fell under my watch. And it was a little bit of a learning curve for me. It was a process.
A lot of it has nothing to do with football.
Yeah.
As a coach once told me, a lot of it's just making sure a guy gets there on Sunday. That's your managing personalities. And but to me, Omar, the bigger issue than the coach is the structure they want. Okay, they're saying we're going to try to keep our defensive staff. We're going to hand you Tua. He's our quarterback. And really, we want an offensive coordinator. We want to glorify it as a head coach.
We'll get into your column a little bit later in X's and Omar's, but I find some of these alleged leaks or things that are being said and talked about how they're going to force the next coach to inherit a quarterback, how they're going to force him or encourage him to keep his defensive staff. Some of those things make me a little bit uncomfortable because we don't know what's truly being said. And let's be honest and transparent. Chris Greer doesn't leak information. And if there's anybody who's responsible for this decision, it's going to be Chris Greer and Steve Ross.
And
Tom Garfinkel. So I don't believe half of the stuff that comes out. I don't. Like earlier this week, we had somebody reporting that their interviews were done and they hadn't even taken place yet. And people are getting information.
You look at the sources in these issues. You don't just look. There's a New York Daily News writer who wrote Brian Dable was the number 1 option for the Dolphins. I mean, a lot of this is just agent driven.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Matthias asks, or excuse me, Jazzy Justice asks, I can't wrap my head around all the hype over Harbaugh. I'm stumped. Why Harbaugh?
Because he wins. Because he can develop a culture. Because he knows what he's doing. Now, he didn't really show that at Michigan. Because he can easily assemble a staff. He's got his staff waiting. It's a snap of a finger.
Well, and because he's the most accomplished NFL candidate out there.
I think Jim Caldwell's accomplished more than him. Oh, my God. Jesus Christ.
Is Jim Caldwell, the question becomes, is Jim Caldwell I guess, an option that the Dolphins are considering? Because they ruled him out.
Yeah, no, without doubt.
I would agree. I was surprised Jim Caldwell was. I was surprised Doug Peterson wasn't involved here. Dan Quinn, another former coach. They have decided they don't want former coaches. This is, again, I've talked about this is how Steve Ross likes to hire in business, the young rising guy. It just hasn't worked out very well with NFL coaches.
Not sure to work out well this time around either, but I'm open for the possibility. But Dice asks, how far are the Dolphins away from a roster standpoint to run the 49ers offense in case it's Mike McDaniel that's the hire? Well,
go ahead, Omar. I mean,
if to run what Mike McDaniel ran with the 49ers, you need a physical, aggressive, athletic offensive line. We could say that what they have is athletic, but you're going to have to kind of coach it up. But, clearly you're missing some pieces. Then we get to the running back. Now, 49ers, they are a running back by committee team. So, it's not like they've got a huge bell cow. Now, they do have Deebo Samuels. There's probably a Deebo Samuels that comes available in free agency every offseason. You just got to go out there and do what it takes to get him. But talent-wise, Duke Johnson, Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, Philip Lindsay, I think they can carry a rushing attack. I mean, if you put a gun to my head and said, you got to win games with these four backs, Dolphins won, 9 games this year? Myles Jackson produced 900 yards in 2020 season, and despite missing probably, I believe it was 4 games with a knee injury and COVID. So can they do it if you have the right horses in front of you offensive line? Yeah. But to me, the question comes down to whether or not that's his style. We don't know. And what about if he wants to come with Jimmy G? What about if Jimmy G's out there shopping for a new team? And I know Dave isn't as enamored with Jimmy G as I am. But what about if Mike McDaniels has sold himself as, hey, I want to take Jimmy G with me wherever I go, because he's clearly going to be shopped.
Did you see the game on Sunday with Jimmy G?
I did, and I saw the game before that, and I saw the game before that.
The game before that, they won on a blocked punt and for a touchdown. I mean,
I'm telling you, you can win with Jimmy G. He's taking his team to a Super Bowl. Now, does he have things to clean up? Yes, he does.
See, I would say I'd change that verb. He accompanied the team to the Super Bowl. He didn't take them. He didn't drive them to a Super Bowl. If you're going to do that too, is see what he is. See what you do with him. Don't bring in Jimmy G. I mean that
not for $25 million a year. I
will say also, San Francisco's offense ranked 13th this year in scoring. It's not like they were a juggernaut. And
I'll take it.
The Cowboys ranked first in scoring, and then they went flat in the playoffs. Okay, and then they're still trying to figure out what happened on that last play against San Francisco. The Cowboys are so. These two candidates that the Dolphins organization is enamored with, I guess. We don't know enough about them to say this is a certain great head coach or to get excited about. Look, when Wayne Huizenga was the owner, he didn't win, but when he brought in Jimmy Johnson, when he brought in Nick Saban, when he brought in Parcells, you saw the path to winning through those guys.
Yeah. Fitz had asked if Mike McDaniel, or let's include Kellen Moore, get this job, what will their staffs look like here in Miami in terms of caliber of assistants? And I think that's the biggest concern that we have for Kellen Moore who's not necessarily perceived as a leader of men, even though he was a former starting quarterback. I remember him in the draft process with Russell Wilson. I vividly remember at the Senior Bowl going to talk to both quarterbacks, accompanied by Pat White. One of the memories that I will never forget. And I had just sat there with Pat White and him confessing to me that he was too small to play in the NFL game. And here I am walking onto the football field to go meet these quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. And Kellen Moore and Russell Wilson are just they're seeing their hero, Pat White. They're like so enamored with him because people don't forget Pat White was a legend in the college game. Pat White like revolutionized how quarterbacks played with that athletic spread style, and they were so enamored. And all I kept thinking to myself, Dave, was these guys are my height, all of them, and they're too small to be quarterbacks because
That's not the case anymore. You look at Kyler Murray. There are smaller quarterbacks now. But the staffs of these guys, that has to be top. Again, we can get into this. I assume the staff, they're going to try to keep as many defensive guys here, and because they want to run this, the idea is we want to keep this rising defense rising, and one way to do
rising defense. They were ranked 18th last year. Let's be
after the year against backup quarterbacks, they did really well. I'm trying to be optimistic, Omar.
Yeah, I heard this narrative of they're a rising defense. They're a great defense. Oh, we got to keep it together. They're their best category was 11th in red zone efficiency. Everything else, they were mid-tier, mid-grade, mid-level, 18th, 20th, 21. And I thought to myself, what are people talking about? They
played awful the first half of the year. The last half of the year, other than the one game that mattered against Tennessee, they held opponents to 11.7 points a game. Hey, you're the one who's all over this 7-game win streak or whatever it was in the last half of the year.
Huh? Won 8 or 9 games. Loved it. And very impressive. Should have saved Brian Flores, but it didn't. Now you're expecting me to believe that this defense is going to remain consistent without Brian Flores? That's the one thing I actually knew he did.
I'm with you on that.
Yes,
that's a legitimate question.
So last week, I believe it was Sunday, Dave Hyde came from the top ropes with a WWE, WWF style column, just elbowing on this Dolphins organization. I have never seen you be that harsh, that critical of the organization. I've seen you be harsh and critical, but that column, which basically said that they're trying to hire a yes man for Chris Greer. And
I didn't think of it like that. I thought of it as they want an offensive coordinator and call him head coach. You coach the offense. And yes, the keys are even more given to Chris Greer on running the organization. Yeah, but this whole coaching search, it's not made any sense to me what they're doing.
It doesn't. And I acknowledge that it doesn't. Why didn't you sit down? Why didn't you just meet? And it reminds me a lot of the Dennis Hickey head coach search for the general manager. You remember that? Where 3-4 Ray Farmer and Nick Caesarea and the guy from Baltimore, everybody said thanks, but no thanks. Not interested. Turned down their offers. And then they ended up with their fourth choice in Dennis Hickey. And all the while, people are trying to get him to interview Mike Tannenbaum and some veteran guys. And he's like, nope. I want the young, inexperienced guy. And then you realize that Dennis Hickey was in over his head and then hires Mike Tannenbaum as a consultant and then puts him ahead of Dennis Hickey in the power structure. The whole thing made no sense. And it just seemed like one error after another. And I'm not denying that your column wasn't on point because this whole coaching search has just seemed like one mistake after another.
and you tie it in. You keep hoping for the best as a Dolphin fan.
You think they have a plan.
Or following, you think they can't be that incompetent, right? I mean, you think, no, look, these are professionals. And yet, look at 13 years of Steve Ross hire. I can't think of a good hire he's made where you say, that makes sense.
Tom Garfinkel.
On the business side, it makes sense, but he wants more power on the football side. Should he get it? Tom Garfinkel is the Don Shula of running the business side of the organization. He's making money hands over fists for the Dolphins. But how many, and this is across the league. Every business guy wants to get into the football side because that's where the glory is. That's where the attention is. Okay. And usually football people.
Or maybe you feel like you could fix things that are dysfunctional that haven't been fixed in 13 years.
Well, it was his plan to tank Omar. It was his plan. So, and that didn't work out real well. Okay. So I like Tom. Everybody likes him. But if you're saying here's a bright football guy, he's not a football guy. Now, maybe he should be in charge of the football organization as a whole and say, here's who I want to be the general manager picking the draft. Maybe
I thought tanking was a great strategy. It just was executed poorly.
You sound like
sold.
You sound like the coach after we got beat 35-0. That was a good game plan. We didn't execute.
That's exactly what it was. It was an execution issue, Dave.
Well, you know what? Then it wasn't a very good plan because you didn't have the coach on board with the plan, which is what this whole.
And the coach didn't have the quarterback on board. Hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick was just out there winging, playing for his career. Props to him. As I always said, I credit him with 4 of the 5 wins that Flores had in his first season, and Flores earned my respect after that. But Ryan Fitzpatrick propped up this team like a kickstand.
Yeah.
Forget
the $100,000. Tell him to bench Fitzpatrick, and you would have had Joe Burrow. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
But then you would have lost your whole locker room because nobody would have respected you.
You know what? You know what? None of those guys would be, but maybe 10 of them would still be here.
You're probably right. That I look back at that 2019 roster, and there are like 10 guys who are still around, and 10 guys that mattered. Our next question comes from Cliffy Mack, who asks, "You said previous shows that Tua has the it factor. Do you still feel like he possesses that, or has he lost it?" That question is directed to me, and I will say the same thing that I've said from the time Tua was drafted. I believe that he will be an upper echelon top 10 quarterback in 2023 when he's seen every defense the teams have had to have thrown at him. He's figured out what his strategy is and knows how to adjust it. That's not my concern about Tua. I think he's proven he's an NFL starter. The issue that I have with Tua is the same issue that I've had from day one: durability and arm strength. And now I'll throw in a third onto it: leadership, because that is an issue that has been addressed to me, and commitment to the game. That's another issue that has been addressed to me, and he's got to solve it. He's got to fix it, and maybe the next head coach helps him fix it and solve it and addresses it. I've often talked to players about why is there a disconnect with Tua, and you'll hear publicly there's no disconnect with Tua, that he's one of us, he's one of our guys. But there is a locker room disconnect with Tua. And I think I feel like I've gotten to the good root of it, which is that there's constant comparisons between him and Fitz, from a leadership style and locker room style and camaraderie style. And that's unhealthy because Fitz is popular everywhere he goes. Fitz is like Mr. Popular. And when you're holding Tua to that standard, it's just not fair or healthy. But ultimately, he should have watched what Fitz did and emulated it.
I will also add, I don't think it was really fair to Tua what the organization did this year, where the whole Deshaun Watson thing, as we all know, and who was behind that? Everybody was, but who was the instigator? Brian Flores. It sounded, look, when the players know your coach, he can stand up and say, Tua is our quarterback, Tua. But when they know he's trying to trade for Deshaun. He's not really a quarterback. And so there was this cloud over, the whole Tua regime and leadership and all that. So now they've come out and said he's our guy. Well, they don't have an option. Okay, they don't really have an option right now. He's their guy. So I hope they put talent around him, because I agree. He's an NFL star. He can be a Baker Mayfield right now. He can be put together two good games. I just don't see him that have the physical skills, the arm strength, the size, the running, the durability.
He's proven he can win games, though, Dave. He's proven he can Chad Pennington's way to victory.
Okay.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's way to victory. Yeah, I know that's.
I hope they put talent around him, and we'll see.
I want him to get competition. I feel like they should draft a quarterback.
He should. But we've talked every quarterback should have competition. I mean, this isn't a Tua thing. This is a Dolphin thing where they get a guy and say he's our guy forever. And
yes, the Dolphins organization have made the same mistakes over and over again, and one of those mistakes happens to be they never have the quarterback compete.
Yeah. Okay, Omar. Fertile Star has our next question. What advantages do the Dolphins have by not knowing the scheme they're scouting for in these postseason games?
I don't think it makes a difference. When you're doing these scouting reports, you say, this guy would be this in a 3-4 scheme. He'd be this in a 4-3 scheme. You're grading the offensive lineman. Oh, he's a power player. He's a mauler. He fits his own blocking scheme. And when you're stacking up those positions, you stack them up based on what you need. But right now, this process is about seeing and understanding how deep this draft is at key positions of need for you. Offensive line, offensive tackle, at center, wide receiver, at running back, at tight end, at defensive end, at linebacker. I'm listing off every position in the NFL because generally the Dolphins need every position in the NFL, maybe with the exception of defensive tackle. So you're just seeing how this draft stacks up. And what people have to understand about this draft process, which is going to be led by Chris Greer and Marvin Allen, who is a very well-respected talent evaluator of college talent. The draft has to marry with free agency, and free agency comes first. So you look at what your needs are and you say, okay, this is our approach. This is what we could do in the draft. This is what we could do in free agency. And then you try to figure out what is the right approach. For instance, I give you a perfect example. The Dolphins absolutely need an instinctive, aggressive inside linebacker. How do they get that? They could get it in free agency. Won't be cheap. Going to cost you about $8 to $9 million. Or they can go get it in the draft. I'm not necessarily certain that you're going to be able to do it with the 29th pick, but you never know. Linebackers don't get selected very high. And, tons of teams find linebackers or starting caliber linebackers in the second and third round. Jerome Baker was found in the second round. Raekwon McMillan, when the Dolphins drafted him and made him a starter, he was drafted in the second round. So I think they'll be just fine. I don't think knowing who your coach is or knowing who your position coaches are, I don't think that's a big deal right now.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger deal more with your own free agents right now. What do you do with a Mike Gesicki? Where does he fit in this new offense? Guys like that. So, and I think they're going to keep Gesicki because they need talent. They need talent and they have money. So, but the other thing is, I always think this is a bunch of hooey. Oh, we got to coach these guys in the All-Star game. We really know them. Yeah, maybe you do, but it doesn't translate into drafting better or not drafting better. I've gone through with Tony Soprano. Yeah, it's great. And I'll tell you this, the classic story of this, and it's a Dolphin story, Jason Taylor. Norv Turner coached Jason Taylor in the Senior Bowl, and he thought Jason Taylor was the best player on his team, the best. He went to his personnel people, pounded the table. We got to take Jason Taylor. Charlie Casserly was the GM. Put a 5th-round pick grade on him. He's too small. He's a tweener. Norv Turner called up his old buddy Jimmy Johnson at the Dolphins and said, you might want to look into this Jason Taylor. I can't convince my guys to take him, but, I thought he was the best player. Jimmy looked at him, put a second-round grade on him, and it came down to the draft, Jason, second round, Sam Madison or Jason Taylor. And he thought, well, Jason might drop to the third round because people don't think highly of him. I'll take Sam Madison. He ended up with both of them. So but scouting these games to me, that's the most overhyped thing in the offseason.
What are you talking about? I love that stuff.
Well, that's different. Loving it and getting great
It's not overhyped.
value.
It's not overhyped.
Great value as a team because you were the coach of one of those teams is overhyped.
Mark Head has our next question, which is outside of Ogba and Gesicki, who are the players that should be priorities to re-sign in free agency? How does this not having a head coach signed up impact free agents discussions and alter Senior Bowl perspectives? And, you know, to me, the first order of business is Xavier Howard. You got to figure out how to write the contract, get him on board. And if he's not going to be on board, you got to move him for what you can move him for, which is probably going to be a first-round pick, mid-level first-round pick. This is going to be a reoccurring theme and story and issue until you redo the entire deal. You can't just keep redoing it every year and throwing another $2 million in incentives on it. How that plays out, I have absolutely no idea. It really comes down to what kind of relationship will he have with Mike McDaniel or Kellen Moore, or whoever magically pops up in this process, which nobody's magically popping up in the process. Gesicki, man, Dave, I'm sorry. He's a slot receiver. I'm not paying a slot receiver $14 million. I'm just not.
I know you want that blocking tight end. Everybody wants it, but there's probably like two top blocking and receiving tight ends, and one of them's about to retire, and Rob Gronkowski. There just aren't a lot of them out there, Omar. So I know it comes down to what is the defense will take care of itself. Xavier Howard is a constant. Yeah. It's a constant priority with money, and you're going to have to make the GM is going to have to make a decision. That has nothing to do with the coach. Okay, that's an organizational decision. Because your whole defense is predicated on Xavier Howard, on what he does.
And if he's not here, you could just scrap everything you're doing.
That's right. So you need him back. But Mike Gesicki comes down to what the new coach wants to do. Okay, and how many pieces can you fill in one offseason? As we've said, there's only a few pieces there on the offense where you could say, okay, that guy's definitely there. Now, I'm holding out hope still that this offensive line, you get a real offensive line coach in there. You get a real coach in there.
You really doing that again, Dave?
I am.
You didn't see enough.
You do realize Isaiah Prince is starting for the Bengals.
And he's a problem for the Bengals.
I hope he has life insurance out on Joe Brady because he might get him killed. Or Joe Burrow.
Listen, go get you a new offensive line coach and let him pick his offensive line. Let him go out of free agent. Let him go draft.
You talk about who they should get. Mike Munchak looks like he's going to be let loose by Denver. He is the offensive line coach's offensive line coach. And if you can hire him, put money into him to figure out what's going on.
Does he have ties to Mike McDaniel?
I don't know. I don't know because that's Shanahan's tree, and that's a whole different, right? I mean, that's Mike Shanahan.
What tree's Munchak on?
He's old enough to be on his own. I don't know where he coached in Tennessee as a head coach for years. Then he went to Denver, but he's been at Pittsburgh. I mean, he's not on the Shanahan tree. I know that. He's on the power running game tree, not the West Coast offense tree.
Pittsburgh, Tennessee, yeah, no overlap there.
Yeah,
he's probably gonna go join Harbaugh. Work for a quality, competent offense coach. Anyway. And then other priorities like Nick Needham, Emmanuel Ogba. Do you franchise tag him? Do you not franchise tag him? Are you giving him a $50 million deal, $15 million a year?
So what you're saying here, you're saying that $70 million really isn't 70 million.
It's 65 now. So,
65. But then you give Ogba money, you give Xavier Howard some more money, you give Gesicki, Nick Needham.
listen, Dave.
You don't have a whole lot of money.
Listen, nothing can stop you. The salary cap isn't real. Tampa Bay's up against it. New Orleans is up against it. Pittsburgh is up against it every year. Baltimore's up against it. Somehow they find a way to make what they want to happen. Just somehow they magically do it.
Yeah, but like when the Dolphins had a huge amount of money, they brought in a bunch of free agents. When New England had a huge amount of money, they brought in a bunch of free agents. Yeah, more allows you more freedom to do things.
Yeah, I think you could spend. I think you could spend with that amount of cap space. Obviously, you're gonna have to allot probably I'd say $9 million to your rookie class. The bottom 51 counts. So the 65, you could probably end up signing 8 legitimate, real NFL starters with $65 million. And depends on how you spend it.
Counting your own. That's counting your own. I mean, you're gonna have to put money into these free agents of your own.
I think there's only really if you do Ogba and let's say you address Nick Needham, give him a second round tender. That's 2. You address Xavier Howard, bump up his salary. That's probably $3 million. You still got about $40 million to work with. So that's about a good 6 players.
Right. Okay. So that's 3 offensive linemen, and you're ready to go, right? All right. Matthias has our final question. Can we assume that the 2022 season will be disappointing with the rookie head coach because he will not know who to manage a team from the start, or he won't know how to manage a team from the start? I'll answer that no. No. You know why? Tony Sparano came in his best year. Rookie coach, head coach.
He wasn't a rookie coach. He coached at Rhode Island.
Okay. Good point. You got me. Okay.
Listen, I forgot about that till somebody pointed out to me. He wasn't a rookie head coach. Him and Cam Cameron were not rookie head coaches.
Look, rookie NFL head. We're not calling Rhode Island. We're not pretending that.
Did he do it or did he not do it, Dave? Was he a head coach somewhere?
You got me, Omar. Okay. But how about Adam Gase, rookie head coach, best year, first year. Joe Philbin, rookie year, best year. So, and I remember I was doing a story on Marino at the CBS Sports TV. This was back when maybe Philbin was started, and Boomer Esiason turned to me and he said, the second year is really the year where you judge a head coach. And I was like, what are you talking about? But maybe after these past several regimes of the Dolphins, he may be onto something.
Never thought about it. And what I always find interesting about what the Dolphins do in the first year of a head coach is they don't go out and they don't spend big. They generally, piece it up together with a couple of mid-tier signings, and this has been every coach except for Sparano, and then see what they have, and then they go out and they make their big splash. This year is going to be very interesting if they change their approach, and if they did that, then it'd have to be because of Steve Ross, and he wants to spend every year, so. And it's his money, so let him do whatever he wants to do if he's still owning and running the Dolphins organization. Hey, listen, the NFL said there's no merit to these claims, Dave.
Yeah, it took them about 2 hours to come to that, but no merit or claim, but there's a lot of conversation. Okay. And what I
did find interesting was that Brian Flores had tipped off or told the Houston Texans and the New Orleans Saints that this lawsuit was coming. So you don't think the New Orleans Saints or the Houston Texans immediately?
The NFL had that for more than 2 hours. Okay, I would say they were poring over it for a much longer time, and so this is going to be it's going to be.
It took me hours to read all 58 pages, and I read it twice, and it makes a hell of a case for racism in the NFL, which we all know is prevalent and real.
Brian Flores was fired by the Dolphins because he couldn't communicate, and yet you read that lawsuit, he's communicating pretty well.
Well, his lawyers are communicating pretty well, and I watched his ESPN. he was the same coach that I covered on ESPN. And, I'm ultimately, while I'm not a Brian Flores fan, I'm proud of him for what he's doing. I support him in what he's doing because he's basically Colin Kaepernick in his career for something bigger than him. And to me, that's commendable. You'll probably never coach another down in the NFL, at least not as a head coach. Maybe somebody takes you on as their defensive coordinator. But you stood up for a lot of people who are disenfranchised, who feel they've been used as pawns, who feel like even these coordinator positions. Now in the Rooney Rule, you have to interview one minority coordinator. These coaches are accepting jobs with their coordinators already identified, if not offered. So now they have to go through this sham of an interview process with coordinators. And I do believe that's where the glass ceiling is, the coordinator level. And until you break that, you're never going to have the real legitimate candidates that you need to have to become head coaches. But I believe that there are other things that you can do, like strengthening your minority internship program. Why is it only for a summer? It could be for a full year. Working towards quarterback development throughout the whole coaching ranks. Like, I'm sorry, quarterback development needs to go down to the college level. You can pour money, effort, time, energy into doing that and have it be minorities like, Robert Griffin III, or, I'm sorry, but John Beck is considered a quarterback guru in the NFL world. John Beck. You telling me that
he's a quarterback coach of draft prospects? That's why. I mean,
he was added to the Jets staff.
I know. I don't think I read he's not going to be back, but he was added. We'll see. I mean,
so you're telling me that there couldn't be an African American hired to do that role or serve that role? Or
I'm not on John Beck's bandwagon here. Okay, I'm not calling him a guru. Okay,
but my point is, opportunities are offered and created for some, not all, and that's what you see. That's very prevalent. They let the opportunities come at defensive coordinator because defensive players generally have a different mentality, demeanor, and oftentimes are led by African-American men. You see there's a long line of former defensive coordinators. Now you add Brian Flores to it, who are looking for that opportunity to become a head coach. But that opportunity doesn't create itself on offense. Unfortunately, why? We got to ask ourselves why.
Why is that, Omar? I'm curious. I mean, because you have Brian Leftwich, you have Eric Bieniemy. That's off the top of my head. I'm sure there's others.
There's a third. I just can't remember who it is right now. In Houston, the one that turned down Flores, Pep Hamilton.
Oh, Pep Hamilton. Right now you had a Brian Dable who was hired to a head coach. He did, he was on a winning team with a winning quarterback, sort of these guys. So why aren't offensive coordinators being hired? Is that I guess that's just one of the pillars of Brian Flores.
Because they feel more comfortable with an African-American coaching their running backs and coaching their wide receivers, and they never let them ever have the opportunity to coach their quarterbacks or their offense. And the elevation doesn't happen because they need them for the black players. But offense isn't necessarily a black unit, so we don't necessarily need you. And this is prevalent not just in NFL, but in the college ranks as well. So until those things change, and until the perception of the people in these positions of power that are hiring change their outlooks and not hire people, because right now, if you go through these processes, these GMs are hired with their coaches already picked out. These coaches are hired with their coordinators already picked out. What is the Rooney Rule for them? What good is it doing?
It came with good intentions when it was put in, but like a lot of rules, the practical application of it isn't really helping anything.
Yeah. Well, we will be back next week. Hopefully, we'll have a coach by then, Dave. you gotta laugh to stop from crying. I believe
We like years ago when America was held hostage on Nightline. They had a day 56. Of we've been held hostage by this coaching search.
America was held hostage.
Well, when the Iranian hostages were
Okay.
held, America held hostage day 57, 58, 59. We need a countdown. If we're in it next week, we're gonna have a number here.
Well, we got bigger drama to deal with. This Brian Flores lawsuit is going to be bigger than Bullygate.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's scary, but
his tenure keeps stepping up. We went from just secretly interviewing Jim Harbaugh to Bullygate to the cocaine sniffing coach who was outed by a Las Vegas call girl to now paying for the team to lose. Allegedly.
Allegedly. Listen. Brian Flores knows damn well he was supposed to be tanking. Let's be real about it. Now the execution was disastrously poor, and was Steve Ross pissed about it? Probably he was. Welcome to As the Dolphins World Turns. We will be back next Wednesday to discuss more fun things that happened in the world of the Dolphins. Wednesday at noon is the show. You can find us on the Sun Sentinel website. This podcast is posted on any place you find your podcast, Apple, YouTube, Spotify. See you next Wednesday, Dave.
See you, Omar.